Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're going to be taking a first look at a brand new strategy game that's coming out on December 5th, just in a day or so. And this is Strategic Command World War I is a turn-based strategy game that allows you to fight through the First World War as either the Central Powers or the Allied Powers. It is a iteration on the Strategic Command series, which is a long-running turn-based strategy game series. We've had a long-running Strategic Command World War II game going, and this is their crack at World War I. There was a classic version of this done maybe like 10, 15 years ago. You can still buy it through GOG or other iterations of that. But this is the first of the new sort of remakes of Strategic Command World War I. They did a remake of Strategic Command War in Europe, and then they did a World War for World War II, a Global War I, Strategic Command World at War, and now they're doing the First World War. So I think this series is more well known for its World War II stuff, and it seems to work pretty well in like a blitzkrieg kind of a war, but we'll take a look and see how it handles World War I's more static nature of combat. Doomdog, it starts at the start of the war. So it starts in August of 1914. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and jump in here, play the single-player game. Now, the game starts with 3 campaigns. These are all grand campaigns, but the developer is open to people developing mods and other things like that, so I'm assuming this will get filled out through mods. Actually, the developer's done some art mods as well that'll be launching with the game, which is pretty cool. But we're just going to go ahead and we're going to jump in right away to start the 1914 campaign and hopefully play this thing all the way through. So we're going to go ahead and play the campaign. Now, the victory conditions for this campaign, we're going to be playing as the Central Powers. So as the Central Powers, we need to either have France, Russia, and the UK. We need to have 2 of the 3 surrender with their national morale below 11 to achieve a major victory. We achieve a minor victory if on November 11th, 1918, the historical Armistice Day, neither side has won a major victory, and the Central Powers hold Berlin, Vienna, Constantinople, Paris, and Warsaw. So basically, if you can knock Paris out of or France out of the war, and you have conquered a portion of Russia, you can win a minor victory. The Entente wants Germany to surrender in order to win a major victory, and a minor victory would be holding Warsaw and Cairo. So basically, if the Germans don't hold Paris and the Germans don't hold Warsaw, then the Central Powers will lose a minor victory, defeat. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in and play the game. It starts on August 14th, 1914. We're going to be playing as the Central Powers. We're going to keep everything flat, so basically playing sort of the normal difficulty. There's a novice and a green. Normal is 0% bonuses for the computer, and so basically playing on equal footing. You can see the Central Powers consist of Germany, AustriaHungary, and eventually the Ottoman Empire. And you can, in this game, you can choose to have some of your own sides commanded by AI, or you can control all of it. So that's kind of an interesting thing where if you don't want to play everything in the game, you can actually turn different elements on or off. Similarly, the Entente will consist of Great Britain, France, Italy, Russia, Serbia, and the United States. I don't know if that's hard-coded, that these guys will always end up in the Entente, because they certainly don't all start in the Entente, but I wonder if there's any way you can like swing Italy to being on the Central Power side or anything like that. Diplomacy is a thing, but in the original Strategic Command World War II games, there were certain countries that were always kind of hard-coded to go one way or the other, and so I suspect these are the countries that are hard-coded to the Allies. I do have a slight problem with Italy being hard-coded to the Entente, because I could see a scenario where they might join the Central Powers, but we'll see how that plays. Okay, and you can see here you can go with 3D units, or you can go with you can go with sort of NATO counters. I know a lot of wargamers prefer the NATO counters, but I actually like the detail of the 3D units on top of a card, so that's what I'm going to go with. National colors, last turn summary, messages, fog of war, weather, undo moves, and retreats are all on. We'll also have quick animation on. Messages for the AI turn will be disabled in order to speed this up, and we'll show moves in combat. Border style we'll keep as is. There's a couple different options: black, orange, red, gray, whatever. Unit styles have a couple of different options too. The 3D ones, obviously, you can kind of have like a counter piece below the 3D unit. If you turn that off, you just have the standard style, and then you can see the naval counters as well. And that's what we're going to go with. You also have some advanced options where you can kind of adjust different settings in here, and you can actually modify different scripts in the game. So, for example, you can modify convoy scripts, you can modify unit scripts, partisan scripts, mobilization scripts, and turn things on or off, too. Apparently there's a mobilization number 4 where the Entente declares war on the Netherlands. Okay. So something happens if that happens. Belligerence. So I guess you could have Italy turn their Italy declares war on the Ottoman Empire off or whatever. So there's a lot of different things you can modify with scripts and other things like that. All right. So we'll go ahead and hit OK, and we're going to go ahead and jump in here. You have this nice, appealing newspaper script as the game loads. 320,000 Germans attacked the Belgian city, defended by a garrison of 35,000 at Liege. Premier Asquith to address crisis response tomorrow in Parliament. German aggression will not go unpunished as Belgium fights on. Okay, so this game is going to start, as many of the other strategic games do, with various options and decisions for you to make. So the first thing that's going to come up is a German decision, and it's going to basically ask you, how do you want to deploy your armies for victory? Most of our army is now mobilized, but some units remain to be deployed. Some options on deploying these units are to deploy them and strike hard in the west, to strengthen your force in the east, to deploy them in the south and let them take part in the conquest of Serbia. Choose wisely, because this could probably be the most important decision you will have to make in the coming conflict. If you select auto-deploy, then these units will be placed within the vicinity of their historical starting points, mainly near Belgium, though some cavalry will be deployed further south near the French frontier. Okay. So we have, it looks like, a German headquarters unit, the 1st German Artillery, 1st Cavalry Corps, and then some infantry corps. We can deploy them manually by kind of hitting OK, and then we can deploy them wherever we want within Germany, although it doesn't look like we can deploy them in the south against Serbia. Or we can go ahead and do an auto-deploy, which will deploy all of them in the west here against France. Now, I will say one thing. I've played through the first couple of turns several times in this game, and one thing that kind of stands out, in my opinion, is for a game with a map this large, and for the scope that the game has, I do feel like the early war period feels a little bit too sluggish. It doesn't ever really feel like you get things going and you're overrunning infantry in the open that aren't dug in, or that you're flanking and really hurting them. It's really more of a slugfest, which is probably fair and accurate, but also really never feels like you seriously are threatening Paris. I think my furthest I've ever gotten was to Boulogne up here, and then Lille over here. So I have overrun Belgium. That is definitely something you can do, but it seems very, very difficult to get anywhere near Paris in the historical attacks that were there. Maybe I'm just bad at the game, I don't know, but that's certainly something to consider. One other thing is the way this game treats Belgium is the second you declare war on Belgium, the British enter the war. Now, I'm assuming the British will enter the war on the side of the Allies anyway, but if you can delay that, I think that's a smart thing to do. And so what I'm actually going to do is, instead of trying to drive for Belgium and force a Battle of the Marne and try and defeat France early in the war, I think we're actually going to take a little bit more of an Eastern-centric approach, because the Russians seem a little bit more vulnerable. There's a little bit more room to maneuver out east, and frankly, the Austrians are pretty weak. I want to focus the Austrians on Serbia, and in order to focus the Austrians on Serbia, I think I should focus the Germans on Russia. And so that is going to be my objective here. We're going to try and overrun Warsaw, and we're going to try and drive east and have success against the Russians early in the war, so that we can then, and actually maybe not, actually let's go for Riga. Let's go for the Baltic states. Let's go for Riga, and then maybe we can, if we threaten Russia, we can do some serious damage here in this conflict. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put von Bülow's army in the east. We're going to put our artillery actually in France, because that's very useful on the defensive. But then we're going to go ahead and put our cavalry corps and our infantry corps out east here, so we can strike against the Russians as they're still getting mobilized. So we're doing a reverse Schlieffen plan, although it's not really a reverse because the bulk of our troops are still deployed against France. But I do want to try and do everything I can to knock the Serbians out of the war first, and then deal with the Russians, and then deal with the French and British. And I think if we don't declare war on the Belgians, we can limit our front against the Belgians, or against the French, and prevent the French from really having any success driving into Germany, either because the front will be too narrow, unless the Central Powers declare war on Belgium, which could be something that could happen. Dogging, thank you for the follow, by the way. Our immediate priorities. A successful advance into Serbia, seizing Belgrade and Niš, will encourage Bulgaria to enter the war on our side. But we must also hold our eastern frontier, for Russian advances may entice Romania into entering the war against us. Romania is also an important food source, so the war with that country could also lead to hunger and low morale at home. We must therefore advance into Serbia while holding our eastern frontier as securely as possible. So that's the Austrian briefing. Meanwhile, the German briefing, delaying, not preventing, delaying conflict with the UK. Violating Belgian neutrality, violating the neutrality of Belgium, the Netherlands, or Denmark will automatically bring the British into the war. Sending any naval unit, including submarines, anywhere near the British coast into the North Sea or Atlantic will also provoke them. So take care if you hope to delay Britain's entry, as without provocation, it is likely the British will remain neutral for the first month of the conflict. So it's basically telling us we've got a free month in August without the British getting involved. I would hope to be able to keep them neutral longer, but we'll keep them neutral through August if we don't attack Belgium. All right, another strategic advice pop-up. The importance of the Netherlands. Imperial Germany's war economy relies on goods imported from the neutral Netherlands. It is therefore vital that we keep the Dutch friendly to us, using diplomacy if necessary, as it is solely due to be her friendly neutral status that she can import goods that would otherwise be deprived of us. If the Netherlands were to enter the war on either side or swing toward favoring the Entente, then we would lose these vital imports, and our people could face food shortages. And so that's interesting, because you don't even want to convince them to join the war on your side. You just want them to remain neutral and continue selling you stuff so that it can get through the eventual British blockade. Okay, so with that being said, we are going to advance a little bit in France. So first things first with the German armies. By the way, it is August 1st of 1914. We have no money, so this first turn starts with you being able to move units in a combat sense, but you don't actually have the ability to buy anything. And so that's something to keep in mind. So first thing we're going to do here is we are going to advance a little bit into France, just to kind of keep their focus away from us. And actually, there's a narrower front, I think, rather than having this front line bend toward Luxembourg and then the Belgian border. I think if we advance a little bit, we can actually shorten the line by a hex or two. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move my cavalry here to the south of Luxembourg. That cavalry is then going to spot French troops in the fortress of Verdun. You can actually kind of see the importance of Verdun over here, because it's a fortress that's just south of the border with Belgium, and it kind of anchors the French army on the Belgian border, almost in a Maginot Line type of a sense. Belfort here on the south anchors the border with the Swiss, and that's just something to keep in mind. Meanwhile, our cavalry here is going to, I think I'm going to hold them in place. I could move them a little bit more. I'm going to move an infantry corps here adjacent to Verdun. I don't think we can actually take Verdun. I think that's a little bit foolhardy. But I do think we can go ahead and advance through Luxembourg, conquer Luxembourg. We'll get a little bit of MPPs, which is the economic currency for conquering Luxembourg. And then we can go ahead and move some of our troops past Metz. There's a fortification there, so it might not be a terrible idea to keep them in place. But we'll move some of our troops forward here as well into the wooded terrain to the west of Alsace-Lorraine. Oh no, enemy contact. Yeah, you don't want to run into enemy troops. If you run into enemy troops without spotting them first, you will get massacred. And you can see here the 21st German Corps right there just got absolutely blown to pieces by even just skirmishing, I guess, with the Belfort Fort. I didn't tell them to attack the fort itself. They just, found out, oh, there's troops here, and they got savaged. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and support these guys here. And then I don't want to actually force march. I could march these guys into the mountains, but they lose a lot of morale, right? Yeah, they lose 50% morale doing that. Okay. In any event, we've now advanced into France, but we haven't actually attacked Belgium yet. We could attack some of the French troops in along the border here. By force marching them, I prevent them from being able to attack either. I'm kind of curious about attacking here. Although maybe I just shouldn't. Again, my strategy was don't attack. So I should probably abide by that strategy. And just kind of focus on having a double line of troops all along the border with France. So that if they do start counterattacking us, that we've got sufficient forces to withstand them for quite some time. And we're completely abandoning the Schlieffen plan by that token. So you can see here we're going to stack up troops on our border with France. We're going to turn this into a slogfest. We're going to move some headquarters around here to account for our completely new strategy. And then we're going to keep a couple of troops here on the border with Belgium just to prevent the French from getting, you know, any ideas about maybe moving themselves through Belgium. This is actually Denmark, or Holland. So we'll go ahead and move these troops down here. And then we've got some Marines. We've got a troop up near Flensburg as well. I can't rail them down, but I am going to rail them to the Belgian border as well, and this will kind of be our reserve in the north. Meanwhile, these fighter aircraft are going to fly a little bit closer to the border. I'm tempted to try and squeeze in here at Verdun, or try and attack some of these French troops, but you can see here if we attack these guys, it's 3-1 against the attacker. We could attack this unit, which is in a little bit of a salient here to the east of Epinal, but I don't see much value in doing that. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of hold the line here on the border with France and hope that we can hold the French in place. Made the right wing wrong? No, I'm intentionally not going to move into Belgium. I don't think the Germans are strong enough in this game, to be honest, in Belgium. Meanwhile, I think what we're going to do is we're going to immediately start an offensive in Russia. We don't have enough troops. Russia's huge. But we are going to drive on Riga to see if we can take the port of Riga and maybe divert Russian attention away from Austria-Hungary. And so that's going to be my intention here. So I'm going to go ahead and advance toward Well, maybe we should actually move some cavalry here. Good idea. Okay, so we used cavalry to advance slightly to scout out the Russian positions here near Vilna, and we've detected various Russian units along the border. Cavalry can be very useful so you don't end up running into surprise elements of enemy troops. And so you can see as we ride north toward Riga, this cavalry formation's detected a garrison at Lebu. They've detected some cavalry at Chavli, and they've also detected an army here near Kovno. Okay, so now we will advance, and I'm going to try and destroy these guys piecemeal. So first thing we're going to do here, we'll go ahead and attack these guys. 2 to 3. One of the things with this game is this is very much not like Strategic Command World War II. You're not going to have a lot of easy slaughters where you just kind of obliterate enemy units without much in the way of losses. Because guess what? It's World War I, and even the Russians were capable of giving the Germans a bloody nose. All right, so we've just destroyed a Russian corps to the west of Kovno, and we've now invaded toward Riga. Our army here will move forward to Tilsit, and then we'll advance this other corps. I think we'll actually put them in the fortifications at the Masurian Lakes here to protect our southern flank. Meanwhile, we'll keep a garrison at Thorn. And then these guys over here, these troops here, will advance. Well, maybe we'll actually keep... I don't know. I think we'll actually move these guys north toward Grandens, however you pronounce that. We'll keep these garrisons and these fortifications along the Prussian border. And then we'll have the Austrians take up positions in their various fortifications as well. At Premzel, we'll try and defend the Galician oil fields. In this conflict here. Meanwhile, Austrian cavalry will go ahead and advance into Russia to kind of detect what might be out there. We'll advance toward... Yeah, okay. Actually, I'm going to advance these guys in the east, too. So I'm trying to hold Lemberg, Premzel, and some of these other key cities, but the Russians are probably going to advance toward the oil fields at Tarnopol and into the Galician region, which is very important for Austria-Hungary in terms of food production, morale, other things like that. So I'm going to move these troops into Lemberg. A little bit of a forced march, not quite what I wanted to do, but hopefully this cavalry up here in Russian territory and this cavalry over at Prosekov, as well as the infantry over here near Vinnytsia, or however you pronounce that, will all act as a bit of a diversion for the Russians so that they focus their efforts elsewhere, perhaps. Meanwhile, these guys are going to go ahead and advance to the border, I think. I don't want to force march them because I'm worried that'll really hurt their effectiveness. So we'll actually just march these guys north into Poland, and they'll push a little bit toward Lutz as well. Again, acting mainly as a scouting formation. Meanwhile, in Serbia. Shit, why did I do that? Of course, I advanced into Serbia without adequate scouting. Got my troops shot up. Okay. All right, these headquarters here at Sarajevo. I don't really care about this garrison. I care more about destroying the enemy armies, I guess. Alright, so we'll move these guys here. We're going to attack this garrison, I guess, in the interest of trying to destroy it. Not quite. Meanwhile, this army is moving south of Belgrade. I don't think they're going to advance out of Belgrade because that'll surrender the city to us. Meanwhile, the Austrian army, we're going to move these garrison units south toward the border with Serbia. And then we'll move this recon unit here to the Russian border. So I think it'd be great if we could knock out Montenegro as well. But maybe not. All right, so the Austrians kind of suck. That's part of the problem here. And there is a whole research and diplomacy element of the game. It costs money to do diplomacy and it costs money to do research. So we're not going to dive into that quite yet. One of the interesting changes is you do see the national morale up here along the top. And it looks like these are bars that kind of fill up or go down as the national morale changes. So I think that's an interesting departure from the way that the previous Strategic Command game worked. Meanwhile, I'm assuming the French fleet's going to show up here in the Adriatic at some point. What's this convoy route? Where's this from? This is from Egypt, so that's a British convoy route. These look like they're all British convoy routes. Maybe this one's Italian. Yeah, so we'll have our submarines adjacent to this this port here. We're going to go ahead and have our pre-dreadnought battleships fall back into the heart of the Adriatic for a little bit of protection. We do need to mobilize our navy, which is not yet ready. But we're going to go ahead and fall back to the Adriatic. Matt, I'm playing as the whole Central Powers faction. For the Germans as well, we're going to concentrate our navy in Wilhelmshaven, or however you pronounce that. Wilhelmshaven. But I'm going to bring my navy into... I'm not going to move it into the North Sea. I'm going to keep it in the south near the German border because I don't want to provoke the British. But I am going to go ahead and keep my navy around Wilhelmshaven and bring these guys through the Kiel Canal so that they're ready. I am also going to have a few elements of the fleet perhaps probe out against the Russians to do a little bit of scouting here along the Gulf of Riga just to see what the Russians might have in this area. I'm guessing the bulk of their fleet is up in the Gulf of Finland at Petrograd, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Might be interesting to see if our navy could help bombard Labau. So we'll keep some units over in this direction as well, toward Memel and what have you. So we are going to do that. I'm also going to move my aircraft forward as well to try and help scout out against the Russians as we advance. We do have one other unit that I haven't moved here at Allenstein, and we'll move them from south of Tannenberg. You can see there's a Russian formation here that could threaten the flank of our advance on Riga. Riga is a national morale objective, so I'm thinking it might trigger a response if we do advance that way. So actually we're going to follow these guys back to Allenstein. And I'm going to shift more troops to the east as well as we eventually get money so we can rail troops to the east. But this is it. We're bulking up our fleet near the North Frisian Islands, and then we're having a few elements stay in the Baltic to deal with the Russians. Maybe actually if we can keep the Soviets out of the war, or sorry, the British out of the war, it might not be a bad idea to just go overwhelmingly into the Baltic and try and crush the Russian fleet. That might not be a terrible idea. But that's about all I can do for this first turn, for this August 1st turn. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and jump in and see what the Allies do now that we're ending our turn. A slight advance into Russia with the Austrians, a drive on Riga with the Germans, attempting to destroy the army near Kovno, while also being aware that the Russians are mobilizing troops in Poland, and that does threaten our flank, so we need to be careful about that, while the Austrians attempt to crush Serbia. And that's where we are right now on August 1st of 1914. Let's see what the Allies do on their first turn as we move toward the middle of the month. Luxembourg surrenders. Germany plunders 24 MPPs, which is the economic currency in the game. You're given a decision. Commander of the High Seas Fleet, Admiral von Ingerhol. Our Mittelmeer division, whose flagship is the Goeben battlecruiser, is currently in the Mediterranean sailing toward Constantinople. It is recommended that the Goeben continues on to Constantinople, where it will be taken into service in the Ottoman Navy and renamed the Yavuz Sultan Selim. If you decide not to send the Goeben on to Constantinople, then she will instead sail to Pola in the Adriatic, where she will serve alongside the Austro-Hungarian Navy. Would you like to send the Goeben to sail to Constantinople to serve with the Ottomans? Yes. Or would you rather send it to Pola to serve alongside the Austrians? Yes, my German accent needs work. That is 100% factual. Saying yes to this will not only provide the Ottoman Navy with urgently needed reinforcements, but it will also help mobilize the opinion of the Ottoman Empire toward joining the war on our side. Sure. Historically, there was this great chase between the British and the Goeben. Chancellor Konrad von Holzendorf. General von Bohm-Emmerle and the 4th and 7th Corps of our 2nd Army are currently en route to Novi Sad and Tesmaberg near the Serbian border, where they will deploy shortly to take part in the invasion of Serbia. However, deploying them there may lead us with insufficient forces facing the Russians. Therefore, it has been suggested that we send them to the Russian border instead. Unfortunately, sending them to fight against the Russians will delay their arrival by several weeks. Would you like to send these units immediately to deploy in the fight against Serbia, or rather send them to fight against the Russians? Austria-Hungary declared war in Serbia before the army had finished mobilizing, and Russia's support of the Serbian ally led to mobilization plan being changed. This caused extensive delays and confusion, while many of the soldiers sent to fight the Russians having to march long distances after disembarking from their trains. Additionally, sending these units of the 2nd Army to serve against Russia left Austria-Hungary's offensive against Serbia lacking in sufficient strength. Yes, we're going to deploy them against Serbia. Given we're having the Germans help us against the Russians, I think Austria can focus on the Serbians, hopefully crushing them more quickly. French mobilization continues. Russian mobilization continues. So the Russian mobilization is gaining steam. With that, you can see they're deploying forces along the Russian border. Meanwhile, the Austrian mobilization is continuing as well, which means that we are deploying troops against the border with Russia as well. Yep. Yeah, I know getting the battle... Sending the Goeben was important because the British seized battleships that were bound for the Ottoman Empire and were nearly complete, and the British, needing them for the war against the Germans and also being a little bit mercenary-like, understood that it was likely the Ottomans may go against them anyway, and they didn't want British battleships fighting against, or British-built battleships fighting against the British in the name of the Ottomans. And so the British seized these warships that had been fully paid for by the Ottomans. It outraged the Ottomans and made them that much more likely to join the Germans. And then when the Germans showed up with a fancy battlecruiser and offered it to the Ottomans, that was obviously a decisive factor in the Ottomans joining the war on the side of the Central Powers. HMS Agincourt. And you can see here the French are launching their historical attacks into the frontiers. The Battle of the Frontiers, where I think the French lost over 300,000 men. That's a rough memory. I'm not 100% sure on that. Was a disaster for the French. They attacked into the heart of German defenses along the French-German border while the Germans were marching through Belgium. It was a very, very bad day for the French army, one that they may have arguably never fully recovered from, all while being outflanked and attacked by Germans through Belgium as well. And so that was a pretty big moment. The German plan was actually to let the French attack successfully into Germany to lure them further away from Paris as their big right wing swung through Belgium. But the German defenses were so successful along the French border that they actually launched attacks there as well, and they tried sort of this double envelopment, which was not part of the plan at all, and in many ways actually hindered their plans against the French through Belgium. And so it was kind of this aspirational kind of view of, hey, this worked for Hannibal, right? So maybe we should do it. But it was perhaps not the best idea. Meanwhile, thousands of refugees are arriving from Galicia, spreading fear throughout Austria-Hungary. Russian national morale falls due to the delivery of the Sultan Oman to the Ottomans. The delivery of the Sultan Osman swings the Ottomans away from the Central Powers? Oh, the British delivered the battleship to them anyway? Huh. So now the Ottomans have 2 battleships? Well, that would be a bad day for the Russians. The Ottomans get a British-built battleship and a German battle cruiser? Give me just a minute, Tortuga, and then I can jump over to the podcast here. One sec. All right. Let's see here. Aiding Austria-Hungary. Without the assistance of Austria-Hungary ally could struggle to achieve decisive victories against Serbia and Russia. In due course, it may also have to face war with Italy. It is therefore recommended that we send aid to the Austrians. If we do this, click on War Maps at the top of the screen, the convoy map, then click the German flag, and you can adjust the number of military production points to be sent to Austria-Hungary every turn. Given our weakness in East Prussia, we could greatly strengthen our position there by bringing Paul von Hindenburg out of retirement and giving him a field command there. To assist him in his duties, Erich Ludendorff can serve as his chief of staff. Providing Hindenburg and Ludendorff with the necessary logistical support will cost us 200 MPPs at 500 at 4 turns. Yes, we do want to form a new army, the 8th Army, in Eastern Prussia at Marienburg. So we get a free headquarter unit there. Meanwhile, Austria is given the option of supporting refugees that are being driven out of Galicia, that are fleeing the Russian invasion there. And so you can spend money, 50 MPPs, to provide housing to them. It'll raise national morale by 2,000 points. If you think the MPPs are worth less than 2,000 points, then you can go ahead and you can say no. But that will cause your national morale to go down. Austria-Hungary is kind of like Italy in World War II in many ways. It's a bit of a glass tiger. And so we're definitely going to do yes. We need to keep Austria-Hungary secure. Okay, so that's the situation. It is August 15th, 1914. The Russians have successfully invaded part of Galicia, but I dispute this idea that it's been a disastrous invasion or anything like that. You can see they're mobilizing a lot of troops along the Austrian border, but they haven't really done much. We did have a cavalry unit pretty badly savaged near Pskov. We also have some Austrian units here that are advancing into Russia here, into the teeth of these masses of units. But I think we can probably have a fair bit of success in some counterattacks near Galicia as well. We also have some fresh troops that are in Przemysl or near Sabor or near Tarnow or near Krakow and all of the like. Meanwhile, the German advance on Riga is probably a little bit dicey. I want to go for Riga, but that might be a little bit overextended, especially with the Russians having a large number of troops in Poland. But I think I may continue it anyway. Maybe it'll pull some Russian troops away from Austria. It's kind of the Robert E. Lee strategy of invading Pennsylvania in 1863, hoping it would help at Vicksburg. It's like probably actually a really bad idea, but let's do it anyway. Meanwhile, one of the other really interesting things, and things that I think I really like about this game, is these Russian units here were stationary for 1 turn, so they have now entrenched to entrenchment level. I'm not sure what they are, but it's probably 1, I would guess. And you can see, since they didn't move, they have these little earthwork symbols around their hexes, something the German units that did move don't have. And that represents the fact that, their defenses are going to be strengthened by the fact that they didn't move. And so I think that's a pretty cool little feature that the game displays. Meanwhile, we are going to pull some of our German troops back. You can see these guys lost pretty heavy casualties. I can reinforce them with the money that I have now, but I don't want to do that quite yet. I'm actually just going to move replacement troops forward, and then we can let these guys rest and recuperate next turn away from the front so that we don't give them green troops and then have their morale fall and then engage them in combat anyway. Meanwhile, we could also launch counterattacks at the French at Nancy, which is just, actually, is that, yeah, that is Nancy, just to the east of Toul, and have a reasonable amount of success and potentially advance a little bit further into France, but we'll have to consider doing that in our next turn here. Britain is not yet at war. It is middle of August, so far we have bought a little bit of time. We have a bunch more troops that are being mobilized that will be ready, I think, by the next turn. But right now, this is kind of where we are in middle of August 1914 through one turn. But with that being said, guys, I'm going to go ahead and jump in here and cut this one off, and we will pick things up next time. My initial impressions of this are pretty positive. I think the UI is well done, the interface is well done, the graphics communicate key information pretty well, and there's a lot of interesting events and other things like that that are very similar to other strategic commands. So I think it gets a lot of those things right. I do have some issues with how clogged the front is in France, and I get that, that'd be more spread out if I took Belgium, but if I went into Belgium. But I do think I have some reservations based off my other playthrough about the advance into France not quite feeling right when you go through Belgium. Like, it just doesn't feel mobile. It feels like a slog, and it doesn't feel like it captures some of that mobility that other World War II games, or other World War I games, that is, do a better job of capturing. But all in all, my initial impressions are still pretty positive, and I think we'll get a better sense of this game as we move forward. With that being said, we will capture that another time. So thanks again for tuning in, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please let me know your thoughts below. And as always, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you once again for watching, and until next time, I'm out.